Welcome to FridayNightGlory.com. This is the state high school previews. Kenny Matthews and Chase Shelton podcast episode number 1 of the fall for football season. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well, man. How are you doing, Parker? It's here.
Doing well. Just ready for some Texas high school football.
Yes, sir.
So, Chase, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. I'm excited for the season. It's going to be another good one, another great year.
So you talk about some of the top teams in the state, and we're going to start with 5A. Chase, talk about who you have in your top 5 teams preseason rankings for 5A.
Yeah. Well, I first want to just kind of start off and say that this was not an easy choice to make. Texas is super talented, especially with the 5A, 6A. But with that being said, for 5A, my number 5 seed, I've actually got Highland Park. I think this team, everybody knows about Highland Park, the tradition there. They have one of the best coaches of all time, still coaching. And I think anybody who knows Highland Park, they produce good talent. Obviously, Matthew Stafford, probably their most famous alumni. And their quarterback this year, Brennan Storr, is wearing that same jersey number 7, which in that school is a huge honor. So I think there's going to be a lot of talent, a lot of good things coming out of that team this year. I got them actually at number 5 on my list.
All right, so Kenny, go with your number 5, 5A, number 5 team.
Sorry, let me get back here. I've actually got Lancaster as my number 5 here. Head coach Leon Paul coming over from Duncanville replaces the legendary Chris Gilbert, who's now down at University of Texas perfecting his craft, but the recruiting side of things down there for University of Texas. But I went with Lancaster because I believe in anytime you have a 3-year starter in Glenn Rice Jr., I mean, last year alone, he threw for 3,000 yards, 34 TDs, 5 rushing. I mean, he's kind of he's just solid back there. You know, we need to make a play. He can make the play for you. Also, they get a huge break with Faizan Wilson coming back this year, great receiver. What a summer he had, I should say. I saw him at a 7-on-7 in May. Told me he was going to transfer to Duncanville, and I said the rich gets richer at Duncanville. And then 6 weeks later, I see a little blob. We'll see something on the radar screen that says he's going back to Lancaster now. So that makes everybody happy in Lancaster land over there in Tigerland that's going to have him back because, I mean, he is one heck of a weapon. We've been seeing him since he was a freshman in 7-on-7. I mean, he's a phenomenal athlete. Got to spend some time with him and Stephon Johnson, Boogie Johnson, this right before the summer started. And, you know, you're talking about 2 great athletes there, obviously. And also, I think that the key for them also is, their defense. They still got Jamarcus Piper. He had 46 tackles last year. You had Thomas Gord. He had 48 tackles last year. Now, they did graduate. I mean, in the last 2 years, you think about the running backs that have just left that area. Isaiah Broadway, DQ James, Bradford that went to LSU now. They've graduated some really hellacious talent at the running back spot. But that school is one of the things you just kind of figure it out. Somebody's there that's going to run the ball above them. But I really think that Leon Paul, him coming over there, he's still got a pretty loaded roster that he's got over there. Maybe not as loaded as the one he left, but he's the head man in charge now, so you can't blame him.
Definitely. Lancaster has a lot of talent, and, you talk about Faizan Wilson. That just adds another weapon to their arsenal. My number 5, I actually went with the team that made the 5A Division I state semifinals last year, Mansfield Summit. They have David Hopkins Jr. returning, and he looked phenomenal this summer. Saw him at some 7-on-7 tournaments. He's really slinging the ball deep, making good reads in his progressions, and he threw for over 1,600 yards last year, 16 TDs, and they played Dent and Ryan tougher than any team all of last year, only lost by 2 touchdowns, and it was a 1-possession game under 5 minutes. So, and they have Joseph Idenare, who's a 4-star defensive lineman. He's picked up a lot of offers. TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor. He's picked up a lot of traction, and Look for him. He had 50 tackles last year, 12 sacks, wreaks havoc in the backfield. Look for him to have a really big season for the Summit Jaguars. And I think they're going to make some noise. A lot of people, they had a kind of a Cinderella season last year, going to the state semifinals, almost making it to the final day in AT&T. So they're my number 5 team. So rolling into the number 4 5A team, Chase, who's your number 4 team?
Yeah, so for number 4, I actually have my hometown team, the Lovejoy Leopards. This team, I mean, it's a little biased, I guess I could say, but
like Parker's Mansfield. That's a little biased for him too.
Yeah, MISD, a little biased. Hey, they were rivals, but I love them.
But even non-biased, I mean, Lovejoy last year, they showed that they are a legit team, and anybody who watched them play Lido, they were probably their toughest competition. You talk to the players, the fans, even they said that if Lovejoy beat them, that they probably would be in the state game. Now they are losing, of course, some big weapons with Ralph Rucker at the quarterback, Reed Westervelt. They both graduated, but they still have 2 receivers in Jackson Lavender, Parker Livingstone, that are still young guys that really had great years last year that I think are going to step up big this year. Of course, they are going to have to, fill in some key spots, but they have a really good coaching staff. Their schedule, there's no such thing as an easy schedule, but they have a little bit of an easier road, I think, than maybe some other schools. And this team, they're just a small, little country team that they play really well. And from what I saw last year, I really liked what I saw. I think this year they're going to kind of surprise more people again. And yeah, for number 4, I got the Lovejoy Leopards.
Lovejoy.
One more note on that Lovejoy. Nobody played any faster on offense than they did last year.
No doubt.
Nobody.
Yeah.
It's not close. I mean,
and that wears a defense
game against
down.
Aledo was unbelievable game. If it wasn't for a hellacious game from DeMarco Roberts, we may be singing a different tune on who the state champion was last year, for sure.
And a higher ranking, I think, too. So
Definitely. Lovejoy, they made a lot of noise. I actually thought they were going to beat Aledo last year. I actually picked that game. I was like, Lovejoy's going to beat Aledo. That's what I thought. And, think they have a chance to do some special things this year as well.
Absolutely.
And,
Kenny, going on to your number 4 5A team, go roll.
But I kind of went out of my normal. I wouldn't take this. I'm taking Red Oak as my number 4 team this year. I'm worried about the quarterback position, though. But I think that with their district the way it is, they'll be able to kind of figure those things out. But they're loaded. I mean, they're led by that Laxley Johnson, the Baylor commit. He is a load. I think that's a great safety net to have for a new quarterback to come in, a big target like that. They got Tristan Edwards at wide receiver last year, had a great year. Their running back, I love Everson Young. He had 1,200 yards last year for them. They played a shorter schedule because they were in DISD last year. Man, they made their deepest run in the playoffs last year. Got a new coach in town. I do know, got a new coach in town. It came a little late in the year, too. So there's going to be some adjustment. But the one thing about Red Oak is that they're very athletic. They have a lot of speed there. I know it's probably maybe a tad reach early. This pick will look horrible maybe, the end of September. But it might look a little bit better come November. But I really do expect a lot of good things. And then also I was going to say, Elijah Shaw, their defensive back there, he is really good back there in the backfield. And he also got Brock Links. He had the sophomore last year. He had 6 sacks last year for them. So I think that they're going to rely a lot on the running game and their defense early, which will be kind of a tune that I'm going to be saying about some other teams later. But that's kind of what it is. But that's Red Oak is my number 14.
Yeah, Red Oak had a really good year last year. Summit knocked them out in that tremendous game at AT&T Stadium. A lot of firepower. They lost 2 quarterbacks. They didn't just lose one. They lost a senior leader, and then they lose a 4 or 5-star quarterback in Chris Parsons. So they're going to have a lot of reloading to do.
Yes, they are.
And so my number 4.
Bold pick.
Go ahead.
It's a bold pick. I like it, though.
Yeah, I like the pick, though. They had a good year. So number 4, Longview. I have Longview at number 4, the Lobos. You know, they got knocked out in the second round against Dent and Ryan last year, 27-9. They're losing their leading rusher who rushed for over 1,100 yards, Caden Meredith. You know, he was a senior last year. He was a sophomore on the team that won state. So they're going to look to reload. Jaden Allen's going to be the main carrier for them this year, and he's going to be a junior. He had a year to learn from the senior, and we know they like to be run heavy, play action, kind of take that deep shot when it's open. But their defense is really tenacious. They play physical. They get in the backfield, and, you know, they have that showdown week 1. So it's going to be they're out for blood, and I think that's going to be a statement game for them. You know, they have an unpleasant taste in their mouth from last season with Denton Ryan knocking them out. So I think they're going to come out playing. Denton Ryan's got a new quarterback, like you mentioned earlier. So, I mean, anything can happen. I got Longview at number 4.
And they may have one of the most exciting wide receivers in the country, Mr. Hale.
Jalen Hale.
Oh,
Yes. He is electrifying, to say the least. Good pick.
So, Chase, number 3 for 5A.
Yeah, so the only school on my list from the 281 code, Mansfield. Now, of course, I don't cover a lot of Houston, South Texas football yet. Hopefully I can get more this year, but Mansfield cannot go unnoticed. They have a great defense this year. Obviously, last year they did really well in the playoffs, but this year I think they have more talent. Obviously coming back, they got Justin Medlock, the Miami University commit. He's that leader of the defense, and defense wins ball games, in my opinion. If you stop a team, your offense gets that momentum, and they, in the past, have produced pretty good offensive players. King out there, the Miami commit, or Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the NFL guy this year, Trask, who just, from Florida, is actually from Manville. But no, that team is going to go a long way, I think, this year. Like I said, don't do a lot of Houston teams, but they are definitely a team that everybody should know, that keep an eye out for, because they will be competing once again in the playoffs this year.
He made Lauren Moore, one of our Friday Night Glory interns, very happy with that pick.
Yeah.
Oh, he definitely did with that pick. That's, she loves her Manville. She loves them. So, Kenny, going with your number 3 pick for 5A.
I'm going to go with Lone Star. I'm going to go with Mr. Garrett Rangel, the Open State commit. Seems like he's been there forever. He's now his 3rd year being the starting quarterback there. Talked to him not too long ago, and he's got over the dead arm syndrome that he had during the 7-on-7 circuit there for a while there. But Garrett came on the scene his sophomore year and had a great year with Mr. Marvin Mims. He loses Marvin Mims last year, and he had lost a lot up front last year. And they struggled early, but they really got it cooking there, from about the 4th week on, gelling. That offensive line has gotten better from last year to this year. But he also has one of the best athletes in the area, in Aston Genty, to throw to or hand off to. Either way, it's kind of just an athlete. We're just going to get him the ball and see what he can do. Between him and the wide receiver, Jalen Shelley. Yes, that is the younger brother of Jason Shelley, who took that team to the state championship final game against Katy 7 years ago, I think it was. I think it was 7 years ago. But anyway, he's back on the scene again here with that wide receiver. Also, I think this is huge from a coaching standpoint. Coach Surak comes back to them. He was the Princeton coach the last couple of years. He's coming back as an offensive coordinator for them. He was there before when he took the Princeton job. And that year when he had it there was the year that they really excelled offensively there at Lone Star. I think that's going to be big because him and Coach Rayburn are really, really close with each other. And it's not going to be a seamless transition, I believe, because he did lose both his offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator last year. So that, that kind of does, change things up a little bit. But I think defensively, they're going to be much better this year also because their defensive line and offensive line are much better. So I'm going to go with Jeff Rayburn's group and Lone Star as number 3 for me.
Lone Star's always a good team to go with. Can't go wrong with Garrett Rangel at all.
Yeah.
And, my number 3 team, Highland Park is my number 3 team. I felt inclined to put them in the top 5. I have a little bit of, I don't always want to put them in the top 5. They knocked me out my junior and senior year of the playoffs, 4th round and 3rd round. It's always, but Jack Curtis at defensive line, he's going to be holding it down. They always produce solid linemen that play their technique, play their role, and really fit the gaps well. So I would look for defensively their defense coordinator to scheme well, kind of play off your defensive linemen, use them in the trenches to create space for your linebackers to make plays in the open field. Also, Chase talked about it earlier, Brennan Storer. We haven't seen much from him, but he has an electric arm. Really can sling it around, really accurate. He reads defenses very well. I'll be interested to see how he adjusts to the speed of the game a little bit with it being his first year starting, but Highland Park's my number 3 team.
They'll have a tough matchup, Southlake, with that defense. We'll see what Storer can do.
Oh, yeah, that'll be a really interesting matchup.
There's no gimme in that first week, is it?
Absolutely not.
So, Chase, going as we get down the list, number 2 team in 5A.
Yeah, number 2, probably not a big surprise. I've got the Dent and Ryan Raiders. This team, in the past 4 years, I did not know this, but 58-3 is their record. So it's not like they just had a couple good years. They've been amazing for a while. They're just a special group last year. I felt like every other week, Jatavion Sanders was on ESPN doing something ridiculous. And if you've ever stood next to him or even got close, you can see what is so special about him. But of course, obviously, he graduated. Billy Bowman up there with Oklahoma. I know Kenny's excited about that.
Oh yeah.
So they're gonna have some empty spots that they gotta fill out. But like I said earlier, defense. I mean, Anthony Hill, 4-star, 5-star linebacker that's only a junior. He's the leader of that defense. Austin Jordan, the Texas commit. They're still stacked. They have a great coaching staff. I feel like they got to be number 2. You can't really slip them up any lower than I believe in the top 2. So Dent and Ryan's my number 2. You could even say 1, but I'm pretty sure one of who 1 is in a minute. But Dent and Ryan's at number 2.
So Kenny, number 2 team in 5A.
I'm gonna go with Highland Park, the Scots. Y'all already kind of talked a little bit about it, but I think the key to the Scots this year is going to be Christian Reeves, the running back for them. Now, they lost a good tandem at running back last year that I think was very underrated, but if you look at the production from those 2 guys they had last year, I think that was the sole reason why they lost to Dent and Ryan in the playoffs, because they didn't try to run the football against Dent and Ryan. I know Dent and Ryan's got a great defense, don't get me wrong, but you can't go in being one-dimensional against Dent and Ryan, not when you're going to allow those guys just to rush the quarterback. You're not going to win a football game that way. It's just not going to happen. But I thought that they would have stuck with that. They could have made that game. And it was still close anyway. You're talking about Dent and Ryan only scored 17 points in that game in the playoffs. I mean, that 17 points, they can have that in 5 minutes most of the time, Dent and Ryan. So, I mean, that's pretty salty. Randy Allen, I think that every year it seems like he's got major turnover. He seems like every year he's playing basically seniors. So this is nothing new for him. I mean, he's used to doing this anyway. And what's going to happen is they're going to get out there and they're going to run the football. They're going to play solid defense. They're not going to beat themselves. And at the end of the year, you're going to look up and you're going to have 2 guys that got near 1,000 yards receiving. You're going to have a 1,000-yard rusher. And you're going to look up and they're going to be 9-1 or 10-1 going into the playoffs. I mean, it's just how it is. Now, they get Longview, I believe, at Highland Park this year. So that would be one of those games that I'd like to kind of circle to go watch that game. Because especially after last year, I really did not see them going into East Texas last year and putting that whooping that they did last year on them. That really caught me off guard. But, yes, I think that this year is going to be a year for Highland Park. If you just get Storer to be above average at the quarterback position and he does not turn the football over, they will be in the hunt for a state championship, because the man with the fedora. Nobody coaches better than him on the high school level.
Winning his coach.
Definitely. There's not any coach that's better than Randy Allen in the state of Texas. Like Chase said, winning his coach. He's got a resume, and he gets some playing physical too. Scheme's going to be, like you said, putting the players in the right places, not making mistakes.
No.
So my number 2 team, I went with the Lido Bearcats at number 2. There we have Brian Allen Jr., senior stud safety. He can really play. He can cover a lot of ground in a hurry. He's a really good open field tackler, which, his sophomore year, you look at him and where he is at right now, his open field tackling has improved immensely. And coverage as well. He's improved. And also when you come in there as a sophomore, learning the game, and, it moves a little faster than the freshman level, and you go to varsity as a sophomore, and he's adjusted well. Look for him to lead that defense that plays scrappy and physical. But Braden Nicolosi, the Nevada commit, he led them to the state title this past year. Jace Llewellyn, the OU commit, and he's going to be making some noise at tight end, probably 1,000-yard receiving this next year, probably. They like to go to him a lot in the play action game too. So I got Alito at number 2.
I think that's a very good pick. I think Alito, it's just who's going to run the football for them this year. I mean, it seems like they always have somebody special back there anyway. So,
Definitely. They're going to have that offensive line ready, though. They always have a big offensive line.
You can't go against Coach Buck often. You can't do that. I learned my lesson kind of the hard way a few times in this podcast.
So, Chase, go with your number 1 team.
Number 1, probably not a big shock to a lot of people. It's your number 2 team, Alito. I mean, how many schools have 10 championships or more? Nobody except Alito. I mean, Coach Buck, he's probably, you could say, the Coach Belichick of 5A football. He knows the game. Alito, another small town, but they just produce extremely well talent. Obviously they've had one of the best running backs in Texas a few years ago, Jonathan Gray. This past year, we kind of saw a little second version with DeMarco Roberts. Everybody knew what JoJo could do. And sadly, those two had to graduate, but they still have talent coming back. Like you said, Brian Allen, Jason Llewellyn. Brian Allen's younger brother, Jaden Allen. He's only a sophomore, but the kid can play. He has very good potential, probably better than his brother. I've watched him in the offseason, and just as a sophomore, it's crazy to see the talent that he's got. And you can't really bet against Alito. Of course, they're going to have to fill in some pieces, but like you were saying, they just every year they're always finding a way, either deep in the playoffs or in that state game. So Alito, probably for most people, is the number 1 team in my 5A.
Well, with Alito, I'll get to see them second week against Lone Star, as a matter of fact.
That's going to be a game.
That's going to be a great game.
Controversial ending last year.
Yeah, to say the least.
So it should be good, the rematch.
All right, Kenny, your number 1 team in 5A.
I went Denton Ryan. We won't beat a dead horse since you guys already kind of talked a little bit about it, but I think the key to Denton Ryan this year is going to be Caleb Hicks running behind that experienced offensive line to give QB1 Kalen Davis a little time to get his feet wet. He's been nurtured into this position now. He's put in the work now that Hennigan has graduated and off to Memphis land to be a Tiger. But I think that they'll just run the football, because I think that their defense can be just as good as it was last year, even minus the Sanders and Bowman back there, because I think defensive line is outstanding with Mason Davis. He had 9 sacks last year. You've got the best linebacker in the 2023 class behind him. Your tandem of Jordan and Garyon Robinson at quarterback at corners. It gives that defense so many different options on how to play defense, because you don't have, when you can rush 4 and get pressure on the quarterback, it gives you a lot of opportunity to drop in zones and be able to play free And if you think that Anthony Hill's not going to run you down from one sideline to the other sideline when those other four are tying up the other people, you got another thing coming. And even on that, Anthony Hill's going to run the football some for them this year. So the two, going both ways is going to start all over again. We had Bowman, we had Rex, we had Sanders, Drew Sanders, we had, Jatavian Sanders doing it. Guess what? The next one to do it now is all-world linebacker Anthony Hill Jr. So the rich get richer. They're loaded. I expect them to have an extremely good year. And the one thing that they've got now is pedigree. 5 straight 10-0 seasons. That's unheralded to do something like that. And that's not them taking an easy non-district schedule. I mean, they played Geyer every one of those years, during that time, in non-district, or when they were actually in the same district. So you're not talking about, them taking pancake schedule to get to that mark. I mean, they take on whoever they play, and they just basically move you off the line of scrimmage. Either side of it, they move you off of it. So I have Denton Ryan as my number 1.
For sure. I have Denton Ryan as my number 1 as well. You talked about Kaylon Davis. They're loaded with a lot of talent, a lot of guys who can step up, fill the roles of guys they've lost. And talk about Anthony Hill. I mean, there's nothing else you can really say. He'll play both ways, just like the guys past. You listed all those guys that have gone both ways, and it's just incredible how they produce talent year in and year out. And it seems like they just keep getting better each year. They'll lose a lot of people, but they reload. And so they're my number 1 team. And so now shifting it to 6A, top 5 rankings. Now we're moving to the biggest one in the state, 6A. Really excited for this one. Chase, I'm going to let you start it off. Number 5 ranked team in 6A.
I was on mute. Just like 5A, 6A is ridiculous. If anybody has the time, if you're watching, if you just go on like 6A schools, it's hard to pick. Again, Texas, this is the reason why I think Texas is the best state for high school football. But number 5, South Lake Carroll. Now, I would have them higher. As everybody probably knows, Quinn Ewers, he's out. He skipping his senior year. He's already at Ohio State. The kid's going to do great there, though, so he's going to be fine. But South Lake has dropped in my rankings a little bit. The reason why I still have them at 5 is, like I've been saying all the time, defense. They've got 9 starters returning. They still have a pretty good offense. Of course, they're going to have to figure out that QB, and you're not going to just get another Quinn Ewers walking right up to you. So they're going to have to figure that out. But they've got Landon Sampson, South Carolina commit, who I believe was just as good as Brady Boyd. And then the running back, Owen Allen, who shocked me and probably thousands of people when he pretty much bullied that Duncanville defense last year, over 100 yards. I felt like, Kendrick Blackshear, who's arguably one of the biggest dudes I've ever seen, when Owen Allen's putting him on skates and putting him on the ground, I'm like, okay. So South Lake is number 5. They're still going to be dangerous. Of course, the coach, Dodge, it's in their blood. They know how to coach. That team is just still going to be dangerous. So, yeah, South Lake Carroll was at number 5 for me.
And so, Kenny, moving to you, number 5 team in 6A.
Well, I'm going to get on that same follow that cab. Chase, I've got South Lake as number 5 also. Caden Anderson's going to be the starter for them. One thing about South Lake Carroll, when was the last time they had a bad quarterback? It's like Highland Park. When was the last time they had a bad quarterback? It's kind of, you just don't worry about that. It just kind of works itself through. I mean, I think that, in the end, they got 4 weeks to kind of figure it out before district, get ready for district and get rolling. And their defense is what Chase said earlier is going to be one that I think will carry them a little bit earlier. I mean, Avion Jones he's a massive stud of DB with a gutty defense from the Dragons. I think, like he said earlier, Landon Sampson's going to replace Brady Boyd. He slides right into his spot. But it doesn't hurt to have Russell Maryland Jr. over there on the other side too, to be able to throw the ball too. So I mean,
Big boy.
It's not like the weapons have left with Quinn. They're still there. So I think that on that alone, and in any time that you got, Todd Dodge just being your offensive coordinator, you'll be able to put some points up. And I know that the time is starting to get low on us, so we got about 8 minutes, so we better make it quick.
Definitely. And so I got Southlake Carroll at number 5. You talk about Landon Sampson, Caden Anderson stepping in at quarterback. Riley Dodge is going to have those guys ready to play, and they're going to be up there in November, December, like they always are. They're going to get back to state semifinals, state quarterfinals. Always going to be playing deep. So Chase, your number 4 team.
Yeah, my number 4. Going down south, I've got the North Shore. Some people say it's a little low, but I think it's a good spot. Obviously, they lost Demetrius Davis, but they still have Denver Harris, probably some say the best corner, top 3 corner for sure in the nation. North Shore is always deep in the playoffs. They had a great game last year against Westlake. They lost by 3, but they went, I believe, 14-1. 13 of those games, they beat their opponents by 20 or more points. They're just like, kind of like Southlake. They're just a dangerous team. They never have a bad year, it feels like. But, yeah, North Shore Mustangs, I think, number 4 for me.
I just kind of did local, so I apologize for not doing all here. So I apologize to that on that. But I have Denton Geyers number 4. I think this is Arnold's year to shine. He got thrust into an unfortunate situation a couple years ago into the state championship game the way he did. But I'm expecting a huge year from him. From everything I've heard, I've had a great camp so far. But B.J. Phillips is the key there. He's the running back for them. He had 1,700 yards, I think it was, 1,400 yards, 22-something TDs last year, and they got a great offensive line. So Rodney Webb, he's got exactly what Rodney Webb wants to do. He wants to knock you off the line of scrimmage with a running game. Just don't throw to the other team. They're going to win a lot of ball games this year.
Yeah, and my number 4. I went with Katie, number 4. Seth Davis returning in the backfield. He had a monster state game. Look for him to carry the rock, and they have a lot of talent Division I players all over the field on both sides of the ball. Look for them to get back to that state game. They beat Cedar Hill pretty handedly last year. So look for Katie to make another run at state.
Their defense is outstanding. They will not give up many points this year, fellas.
No, they won't. So Chase, moving on to number 3.
Yeah, number 3, I've got the bad boys out there in Duncanville. Number 15 in the nation, just for anybody who wants to know. That's impressive. Reason I got them at 3 is they, like every team, you're going to lose your seniors. They lost, like I said, Blackshear and some other guys. But if you've ever watched Duncanville in person, I know Kenny has, Parker, I'm sure you have. If you just look at them, they're intimidating. When they're doing their warm-ups, when they're even coming on the field, the sideline, those guys, they're scary.
Yes.
And they have, I feel like almost every other player's 3 stars or more, getting big D1 commits. They got Jordan Crook on that linebacker. They're just going to be another tough team this year. And they start off the season against Matterdai. That's going to be probably the game of the week, I'm going to say. It's going to be very exciting. I think if they can pull off that upset, that's a huge momentum. Duncanville could easily go to state this year. So keep an eye out for them Panthers.
I'll go with Rockwall Heath. Coach Bradlin's team is offensively. They've got 6 Division I players commits, on their offense alone. If they get anything defensively this year, they will be a dark horse to get to the championship game. Got beat in the regionals last year, I believe it was. So I expect a huge year out of Rockwall this year. Rockwall Heath.
So going to my number 3 team, I have Galena Park, North Shore. Xavier Owens in the backfield is going to be a key. You lose Demetrius Davis, but you're going to have your running game. And he talked about Denver Harris. You also have a bunch of D1 guys on the defensive line that can really play in their physical. So I'm going to go Galena Park, North Shore, number 3. they have a shot to get back to that state game.
They do.
And so, Chase, go ahead and go with number 2.
Yeah, my number 2 team is the 9-time state champ Katy Tigers. Coach Joseph is just one of those coaches that is a GOAT. And if you watched them in that state game last year, they unfortunately embarrassed Cedar Hill a little bit. And Katy, they always produce talent. And like Kenny was saying, that defense is ridiculous good. I can't really name many other defenses that are even at that level. So Katy's at number 2 for me. I think they'll probably make the state semifinals for sure.
For me, it'd be Euless Trinity because they have Superman, period.
Yeah.
Ollie.
Ollie Gordon. Superman. That just sum it up that way. That's all it is. Ollie Gordon. He can do everything. They have a pretty decent running back in Gary Mannix too, but they have Superman, so they should win.
And he's getting the ball because he's not a quarterback. So.
So at number 2, I have Duncanville. Amari Abor, defensive lineman, beast, OU commit. He can really play. And obviously you talk about Jordan Crook. I've got to see a lot of him. And, you know, they're going to have a new quarterback. They have a little bit of a quarterback battle, but I think things always wrangle up there. They're going to have their guy, and they're going to be looking the part. And they're going to figure it out against Mater D pretty quickly who can play against the top teams. And so, Chase, go ahead and go with your number 1 team.
Yeah, my number one, probably not a shock, Austin Westlake. Really, there's not much to say. They got Cade Klubnik returning, who's probably now the best quarterback in Texas now that Quinn is out. He's got Jaden Greathouse, I believe, at receiver. Greathouse. He's got a target. Coach Dodges. Sadly, it's his farewell tour. He announced earlier that he will retire after this year. So, of course, when you're playing for that coach, you want to win it for him. But not only that, those kids know how to win. They're my favorites to win it again this year. Like I said, when you have a great quarterback like Klubnik, I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't be number 1 on many lists. So the Chaparrals are number 1 for me.
They'll also be playing for their fallen player from last year that got killed in the car accident. I think they're going to have that chip on their shoulder too. It kind of caught the basketball team last year at a bad time, I thought, emotionally. Yeah. But when you have that motivation going forward, I think that goes a long way. On top of Todd Dodge also going to be retiring. They got a lot of things going for them, but they do have the number 1 quarterback in the nation now that's playing on the high school level, I should say.
Yes.
And I think they're just loaded. I think it's a great pick. My last one was Duncanville, and I'll just give you a couple names. Cameron Williams and Jaden Early on the offensive line for Duncanville. I mean, when they get off the bus, they look like NFL offensive linemen. Deldrick Madison in the back end. He had 6 interceptions, 5 picks last year for them. They're just imposing their will on people, and that's how Duncanville wins games. Sometimes it don't look very clean. Sometimes it doesn't look very pretty, but about midway through the third quarter, that's called that train, and that's what Duncanville is. But I do believe if I did pick it all the way through, I would have picked his pick though, Westlake at number 1.
Yeah. I have Westlake at number 1 as well. You know, they got a lot of talent coming back, Cade Klubnik, and you know, there's not really much else to say about them. You know, they're going to be dominant. Coach Dodge always gives you a shot. And so we're running short on time, so we're going to cut it short there. But thank you guys for tuning in. And we're going to be coming at you. Try to get this going, a weekly thing. The hot topics, Chase Shelton and Kenny Matthews joining me, checking out. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys. It was fun.
Hey.